Oh. This is line item number 5, SB 240, which deals with disturbed land and energy projects. Good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and honorable senators and staff. I know you've had a very long day, and I'll try not to prolong it much longer, but thank you very much for the opportunity to present SB 240, which is a simple bill that provides an exemption under CEQA for specific types of projects that are restorative in nature and provide a financial benefit to local municipal government for the sale of the electricity generated. As proposed, this project will be the first of its kind in the state and represents a new potential mechanism to improve our state, create jobs, and save our local government's money. This new program can change the model for renewable energy development in California. Throughout the state, we have programs that seek to protect land for a variety of reasons: endangered species protection, watershed value, sensitive habitats, park and recreation, open space, etc. While considerable effort and financial resources have been dedicated to land acquisitions, there is often lacking the funds to provide management and restoration costs. Indeed, many acres of acquired lands are not perfectly pristine and often contain areas of significant degradation, invasive non-native species, soils contamination, and other issues. This program provides a new opportunity where renewable energy projects can be temporarily, let me say that again, temporarily be installed on degraded lands and will contribute to the ultimate restoration of such lands and the net benefit to the region, while also helping meet the goals of our current and increasing renewable energy portfolio standards in the state of California. In partnership with San Diego State University, a pilot project is proposed that meets the goals of this project, providing cost savings to local governments on their electric bills, restores nearly 22 acres of habitat that is covered by a eucalyptus forest, which is a highly invasive species and a fire risk, and supports a long-term research study on how we can design renewable energy projects that integrate the principles of habitat compatibility and watershed management. I believe this proposal contained within SB 240 is a win-win for the state and the locals. It allows a local government to help meet its renewable portfolio standards with clean energy generated. It allows for the cleanup of some very distressed lands to be restored to its natural state. I want to point out that we've been alerted to some concerns from the Farm Bureau. I commit to working with the Farm Bureau to resolve concerns that they have brought to our attention, and I feel we can easily address their concerns should this bill pass out of committee. I'm very honored to have with me here Dr. Matt Ron, who is here to speak a little bit more in depth about this bill. And thank you for the opportunity, and I would respectfully ask for a vote after Dr. Matt Ron is completed with his presentation.
Sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm here to sort of explain a little bit more about the project, because indeed I think this is a sort of a unique perspective and a different way of dealing with what is first and foremost habitat restoration and degraded site restoration within California. Like the Senator mentioned, oftentimes we acquire pieces of property for watershed value, conservation value, or otherwise, and while the entire acreage may provide a certain benefit to our state or toward those project goals, oftentimes much of that land is a degraded piece of property that includes invasive species, brownfields, or other types of contaminants. And so really what this project is trying to focus on is providing a funding mechanism to help restore those properties, but at the same time it meets a whole suite of other, I think, benefits and obligations by the state of California. First, of course, the benefit is to provide renewable energy to the state and meet some of the goals there, as well as within AB 32. local government benefits because, the electricity has to be moved somewhere. And the local governments have a specific provision that allow them to use off-site generation for their use. And so a goal of this bill is to provide that electricity at what would be a cost savings to local government. And so it would only pass muster if it demonstrated an actual savings to those that would acquire the electricity. And then lastly, I think, and really that's what it is a laudable goal of renewable energy in the state and increasing our portfolio standards, at least within a period of time. Now, looking at some of the analysis that was done on the bill, I understand that language could probably be clarified and additional amendments or changes provided to help, I think, address some of the issues by the Farm Bureau and other organizations. The concerns regarding mitigated neg decks and so forth and the processes there, I think the message here is really that at its core, this is a restoration project, right? And restoration projects under CEQA are already exempted. This is just a different mechanism to provide the funding and the utility for a restoration project. And it doesn't meet sort of I think what we consider a typical standard of restoration or what we're used to. It is nonetheless restoration. And so what we're trying to say is, provide the same level of exemption that you would otherwise, albeit in a slightly different character. And again, this is designed ultimately to provide a net benefit. A lot of the land that we're talking about, whether it's degraded habitat for species or watersheds, or whether it's potential brownfields or other sites, they come with an excessive expense. The example that Senator Stone was using with property with eucalyptus trees will cost well over $500,000 to restore, and that's money that the state of California just does not have. And so this provides that mechanism for them. The other final concerns I think I wanted to address was the issue of, how do you define renewable energy, and issues were brought up with regard to wind farms or thermal solar. Very simply, a solution could be just to limit it to things like photovoltaic, because the types of environmental impacts associated with that are considerably less. Additionally, there were questions about the size of the project and the duration. The duration as proposed was no more than 25 years, and that would be without an extension. It would end at 25 years, and full restoration of the remaining parcel would conclude at that point. As far as the full size, it wasn't specifically addressed by the bill, but you could set acreage limits or, total output of energy limits to this as well to help alleviate some of those concerns. So I guess at the end of the day, what we're requesting respectfully is that there is an aye vote and that there is an opportunity to alleviate some of the concerns and provide additional language to help address that. Thank you very much.
Others in support of SB 240? Opposition to 240? Should come forward.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. As mentioned before, Kyle Jones with Sierra Club, California. As mentioned before, CEQA provides a valuable public process for environmental mitigation measures. We support renewable energy. We support remediation of disturbed lands. However, existing renewable energy plants can create significant environmental impacts, particularly to birds, and thus should be cited carefully. In an analysis like that CEQA provides, we see a discussion of these impacts and mitigation for them. Now, we're concerned that this exemption for rehabilitation of sites already does exist. However, you're allowing for this exemption to be extended for these renewable energy plants or projects for a 25-year period. During this time, permanent environmental damage could go unmitigated without an EIR taken for it, and we feel this is unacceptable. We urge your no vote. Thank you.
Yes. Senator Leno.
I'm sorry, Kyle
Jones. Mr. Jones.
So from your perspective, what would be the potential risk, if not harm, if we were to exempt a project on a brownfield or, has been discussed, a eucalyptus grove or something that's non-native? What is your concern?
Well, with regards to wind power plants, there is a lot of issues that occur with strikes from the blades. So if you have a project that's sited in an area in which you have a corridor for migration for birds, that especially for sensitive species, whether or not that's an appropriate place to site a project would be something that would need to be raised, and that would be covered in EIR.
Whether a grove is native or not, it could be a nesting place, a place where migrations occur.
Whether that, yes, and personally, I don't have the answer to that question, and that I think highlights why an EIR is needed to answer those questions and to present them to the public.
With regard to a brownfield?
With regards to brownfield, there already is the, we support rehabilitation of brownfields. Even still, there could be, by siting a project on a brownfield, it could be in a sensitive area. I know that there are issues right now with thermal solar, and I know that you were mentioning, discussing that, but thermal solar could have impacts to wildlife, again, particularly birds. Like I said, wind strikes, if it's even on the migratory path, they kind of, they can see something as a place to stop and are getting hit by the blades. Without studying whether or not that site is an appropriate place, even if there's already nothing there, we could be potentially causing permanent harm to the environment and without mitigation.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones, isn't one of the other problems that was pointed out in the staff report is the no standards for immediate benefit to the ecosystem? We don't really know what that would be.
Yes, exactly.
And then an assertion, assertion we're going to do it, but we usually have some standards and we look at folks like you and others can come in and say, this is what it's going to look like. Mm-hmm. Okay. Questions?
Yes.
Senator Jackson.
Again, I think we'll be able, should SB 122 pass, we'll be able to expedite this process, the EIR process, the CEQA process, saving at least a year, possibly 2 years. And again, I appreciate the response by the Sierra Club. We need to know what we don't know. And that's part of the reason for CEQA. And I also appreciate the comment on page 4 of the analysis that reminds us, I think, why CEQA is important. And under item 3, what is lost with an exemption from CEQA? And what is lost is to inform decision makers and the public about the impacts of projects, to identify ways to avoid or significantly reduce environmental damage, prevent environmental damage by requiring feasible alternatives or mitigation measures, disclose to the public reasons why an agency approved a project if significant environmental effects are involved, and involve public agencies in the process, and increase public participation in the environmental review and planning process. And in the circumstance that you mentioned, Senator Stone, if you have an invasive species that's having a detrimental impact, I suspect that the public is going to want to be there to support any efforts to try to result in the necessary remediation or whatever it is that the proposal asks for. So, I mean, and talking about renewable energy, we're all excited about it, but that doesn't mean that renewable energy projects shouldn't have to go through CEQA like everyone else. Just because something goes through CEQA doesn't mean that it's condemned or that it's going to be prolonged for, forever. What it means is there's a process by which we are going to identify what the consequences and the benefits are. And as I said, with the bill that I've done, we're going to expedite the process of preparing the record. We're going to make sure that the public has full information about a project in real time, not months later, by having it posted in real time on its own website, and thus reducing, we estimate, at least a year to 2 years on of a project's delays. So again, I know we all we hear CEQA, we think awful, but again, there are only 4% of all CEQA requests end up in any kind of litigation. By expediting the process, as I've mentioned in this bill, I think we can get to exactly what you want to get to while still protecting a process that is proven to be effective in protecting the state. So I appreciate the effort, Senator, but again, I'm going to vote no on this because I just think that we're trying to find more and more reasons to undercut CEQA, and I just don't think that we need to do that or should be doing that.
You may close.
Thank you, Senator, and I certainly appreciate all the comments. And I think this project is very unique in that certainly the public can get involved in an EIR to figure out how we're going to. Well, actually, you don't have to go through CEQA to bring a restoration project to fruition. You have to go through CEQA to put a project on these lands that have been plagued with invasive species or they have spills on them. Here we're identifying properties that have already been damaged environmentally. And the issue of funding comes up. Who's going to pay for it? Here's an opportunity to basically have a restoration plan, albeit 25 years, with the provisions that ensure that the 25 years that we're allowed to put, let's say, a solar project on this 22 acres, that the revenue will ensure that there is money to fully restore that habitat after 25 years, though that solar project will be completely dismantled. So this also, in the next 25 years, will incrementally, de minimisly, with this particular demonstration project, allow the state to get closer to its 50% renewables by the year 2030. So we're encouraging renewable energy, which this does. We have habitat that is already tainted that we're going to fully restore to its habitat value, getting it back to what native species were on it and allow it to be no longer impaired. And we have found a funding source to do that is sensitive to the environment. And I understand with the fans that we could have blades that could kill birds, and I understand that. Is this a perfect solution? I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's worthy of why CEQA exempts restoration projects. But we don't have the money to restore all the habitat that we have in the state of California that many of us, including many of you on the dais, would like to see occur. This is definitely thinking out of the box. It's using a renewable energy source to provide revenue with the ultimate goal, and you have to show that that revenue is dedicated. You have to show that that restoration plan will have the money from the revenues that are generated from this green energy put into a special trust fund requiring that those panels have a decommissioned period where they're actually dismantled and the habitat is then turned over fully restored. So I appreciate the concerns of the committee. I try to not bring bills that don't have any common sense associated with them. I think that this is good for the environment. It's good for the habitat. It's good for the local government that's going to get the electricity at a lower rate. And so I see it as a win-win situation. And I would strongly urge the committee to allow us to think out of the box, and let's see if we can find a mechanism to restore a lot of significant habitat throughout the state of California that deserves attention. But we only have a limited amount of resources. And then I might add that the state of California, whether you all supported it or didn't support it, do look at economic development projects as CEQA exempt. We have a stadium that's being built here in Sacramento that shaved years off of this particular stadium being built as an economic development driver, a job driver. This is much more de minimis in scale. It's protecting the environment, restoring the environment, and help getting us to our renewable energy goals. And I would respectfully request your I vote.
Thank you. Is that a motion by you, Senator Bates? Yes, thank you. There has been a motion by Senator Bates. Please call the roll.
Item 5, SB 240 by Senator Stone. The motion is to pass and refer to Committee on Appropriations. Senators Wykowski?
No.
Wykowski, no. Gaines? Bates? Bates, aye. Hill? Jackson? Jackson, no. Leno? Leno, no. Pavley? Pavley, no.
You have one vote. We'll keep that matter on calendar to see if Senator Gaines does appear. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for consideration.
I see Senator Lara here. You are item number 13, SB 400, Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund.
Romper room.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I was here last week presenting on DTSC bills. Oh, no, wait, that was this morning.
This is item number 13, SB 400.
Thank you. I'll tell you my secret. Hang out with Senator Leno. Mr. Chair and members, SB 400 achieves two important goals. It strengthens the nexus between greenhouse gas reduction funds and high-speed rail. And it also ensures we realize the original goals of the cap-and-trade program to reduce emissions and improve air quality in disadvantaged communities in our state. Through last year's budget process, the legislature appropriated hundreds of millions of cap-and-trade dollars to the High-Speed Rail Authority. Those funds were designated for acquisition, construction, planning, and other costs associated with the project. Once a project is completed, it would have a significant beneficial effect on greenhouse gas emissions in California, equivalent to removing 31,000 vehicles off of California roads. This bill provides additional criteria to ensure that the portion of those funds is directed to the projects and measures that provide a more immediate benefit of reducing emissions. SB 400 specifies that 25% of the cap-and-trade funds allocated for the high-speed rail will be spent on environmental mitigation of the project, including measures that will provide a co-benefit of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving air quality. Recent amendments to SB 400 clarify the kinds of projects that will be eligible: public transit improvements, congestion relief, bicycle and pedestrian routes, and carbon sequestration projects. Members, this legislature has established a policy through SB 535 by our pro tem to allocate 25% of all cap-and-trade funds to disadvantaged communities. I believe that the number should be a minimum floor, not a ceiling. Many of the communities along the proposed high-speed rail route are in regions that are already disproportionately impacted by poor air quality. These regions are designed as extreme non-attainment areas under federal standards that measure air pollution and its negative impact on public health. In many urban areas, we know residents are already impacted by heavy congestion and emissions from transportation corridors. That is especially true in areas where the high-speed rail will share a route under a hybrid system with existing railways that are already busy with commercial goods movement and passenger rail operations. Residents living in close proximity of these heavily congested transportation corridors around the state already suffer adverse health effects from increased emissions. The bill will prioritize projects in those communities. I respectfully ask for your aye votes.
Your first witness in support.
There we go. Hi, my name is Fabiola La with the Coalition for Clean Air. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of SB 400. SB 400 is a good bill for the climate and air quality because it would bring near-term reductions in emissions that change the climate and our health. High-speed rail will reduce emissions in the long run, but SB 400 would balance that with emission reductions with an air quality co-benefit much sooner. And the communities with the worst air pollution, those located in extreme non-attainment areas, they need relief now. The eligible projects listed in the bill amendments, like public transit, cleaner construction and transportation equipment, active transportation and natural systems, they will provide essential benefits to these communities. For these reasons, I respectfully request for your aye vote. Thank you.
Others in support of SB 400? Opposition to SB 400? Okay, seeing none, let's bring it back to the committee. Senator Pavley.
I'd be glad to move the bill, but I just had a question how this works. So the greenhouse gas emission reduction fund has X number of dollars going to high-speed rail. A portion of their greenhouse gas emissions that would go for high-speed rail will be going for mitigation anyway, but you're saying at least 25% of that would go for mitigation specifically in disadvantaged communities adjacent or relatively close by the high-speed rail
Correct.
route,
Correct.
whether in the Central Valley or in LA or
Absolutely.
wherever a disadvantaged community is.
Correct.
So-
That's exactly what we're,
And you're really focused on the co-benefits of localized air pollution and in the short term during the construction phase as well. Is that correct?
absolutely.
Do I have that
Senator
right?
Powell. Yes.
Okay. Sounds like a good idea.
So what do you say to critics that would raise, the project is already doing mitigation in the areas that it's affecting, and it's all public, and then we're doing a second mitigation on the 25% on a project that is already challenged economically. I mean, it's not cumulative. It's if I hear your testimony, it's that on top of all the mitigation that would required under current law, this is additional direction to the impacted communities
So-
as defined by bill.
Right, and so to those critics, I'll say that the communities in which the train is most likely going to already go through, because especially in the urban areas where we know they're going to use a hybrid method, these are communities that are already heavily impacted, that have already been, for the lack of a better word, screwed with a rail yard, with a rail crossing or a rail pathway. And now, even if we look at the ARB's current report on investments in cap and trade, you look at the total amount of appropriation for high-speed rail, $250 million. The percentage that target benefit for disadvantaged communities, they say it's 100%. So located within benefiting disadvantaged communities, they say it's the total project will benefit disadvantaged communities. So to the communities like Commerce, for example, like Oakland, that already have these other, not only disadvantaged, but they have horrible air pollution, we're saying, we're going to put now the high-speed rail in your community, and that's going to mitigate, all the other issues surrounding. And so to me, I say we're adding, this is another stressor. I believe in the high-speed rail. I know it's going to get to what we're trying to do in reducing GHG. This is just saying out of the mitigation fund that already exists, look at these communities that already have multiple sources of air pollution. And now the big thank you that we're telling them is, we're going to put the train in your community. That's going to help you mitigate your funds. So I think the ARB needs further direction from the state to ensure that these communities that are already disadvantaged, that already have horrible air pollution, not to just say, thank you, we're going to put a train in your community. Let's additionally define better what are some projects that they can do to further mitigate the impact of the physical impact of having now the high-speed rail go through your community. And this impacts communities throughout the entire state of where this project's going to be. I get the sensitivities of the funding, but this fund's already being used to mitigate the impacts of the high-speed rail. We're saying further define it for low-income communities that are already disproportionately impacted.
I'm just wondering about the low impact or the vulnerable communities that are not going to have the high-speed rail go in. So let's say we just discount the cars that the high-speed rail will displace in those communities, because instead of driving through Bakersfield, I'm going to be on high-speed rail. So Bakersfield does get some carbon discount. But let's say I'm Lodi or Stockton. I don't get to compete for these high-speed rail funds in it because I'm not an impacted community for high-speed rail. I got all the other indicia of vulnerable impacted community. I just don't have the rail there. I mean, actually, Oakland would probably not qualify because the high-speed rail goes on the other side of the peninsula.
For now.
Well, yeah.
So, not to quote my former colleague, Diane Harkey, but, to those communities we say, we have SB 535. We have other programs in place to help mitigate, and of course, which I support. And again, this should be the floor, because if you look at the port the communities that live around the port, Richmond, Oakland, Long Beach, San Diego. We're working on different programs. The clean air, the clean bus and freight and truck program that we did last year helps with that. But to those communities that are going to have now this train cut across your community as well, I think we should work on it, being able to give them additional mitigation efforts to not only help mitigate having this train go through the community, but, help additional mitigations to help close the horrible air quality condition that currently exists in those communities.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to record an aye vote. I am very strongly in support of what Senator Lara is doing here on this particular bill. Kind of dovetails with things we've done in Orange County, but I have to go, so I want to enter my vote right now, if I might. Aye. I think there was a motion.
I can't do that unless we want to
Okay.
There's a
stop
motion.
debate.
There's a motion.
There's,
Well, I had a question. That's why, can I ask a quick question
Yes.
before you go? I'm trying to figure out, are we, there's just so much money that we're going to be putting into this high-speed rail, and it keeps growing and growing. Does this bill require that we take some of the, not additional
No,
money?
there's already a pot for mitigation.
Right,
out of
and you
that
just
pot.
want out of this pot that we,
Correct.
okay, good, thank you.
Correct.
All right, good.
My question, but I didn't know.
Assistant, call the roll.
Item 13, SB 400 by Senator Lara. The motion is due pass and refer to Committee on Appropriations. Senators Wykowski.
Aye.
Wykowski, aye. Gaines. Bates.
Aye.
Bates, aye. Hill. Jackson. Jackson, aye. Leno. Leno, aye. Pavley. Pavley, aye.
You have 5 votes, so we'll keep it on call for those absent members.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
your
Chair,
presentation.
members.
Let's turn to item number 27, and diversion of solid waste. Senator Hertzberg, this is SB 742.
That would be Senator Hertzberg.
I'm just